All right, welcome. This is a show called For the People with Judge Herb Dodell, and that's me. For over 50 years, I was a trial lawyer, civil and criminal, state and federal, plaintiff and defendant, and in 2008, I was appointed as a judge pro tem in the Los Angeles Superior Court. And during that period of time, I was assigned to many different subjects, among which was restraining orders. With what's going on now with violence around the country, especially with regard to schools and kids and people having guns, what we're going to talk about today, briefly, is how can we control the people who have the guns? No one really wants to take guns away from anybody. I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, but the question is, who should have these guns? And it reminded me of a case that I was hearing where there was a lady who brought into court her phone, and she said there was a lot of good information on that phone, so she gave it to the bailiff gave it to me, and there it was, right in my face, a girl sitting on a floor with a beer can in one hand and a gun in the other with a note underneath. Well, I granted that order, and obviously part of every order is to take away guns from people who shouldn't have them. We, as bench officers, have to make that determination, and I'll tell you a little bit briefly how it works. People come in first seeking a temporary restraining order. That is to keep things steady at the moment until a permanent order can be granted or not. And those temporary restraining orders are granted mainly on just papers. There's nobody there, there's no bodies there, there's nobody to talk to. We make a decision in chambers as to whether or not to issue them. And once we do that, included in that order, as well as in permanent orders, is a prohibition against the respondent from either owning a gun or acquiring a gun or large amounts of ammunition. And so there is now an order. And I said to myself after that case, you know, there may be a way that we can use this mechanism that we already have in existence to keep the guns out of hands of people who shouldn't have them at all. And so I suggested to a friend of mine, a fraternity brother of mine who's a U.S. Senator, that maybe we set up a national database which includes anybody against whom a restraining order has been issued. And those restraining orders are usually 3 years, generally. And so if anybody is buying a gun and they go into a gun shop, the seller has to look at the database. And if the database shows the name of that person, obviously the sale doesn't take place. But what happens is they have to turn the information over to law enforcement. Why is that? Because those people are violating a court order, which is, by the way, a crime. And they will then know that there's somebody out there who's looking to buy a gun, and probably not for a very legitimate purpose. They shouldn't have it anyway at all. And if they sell that gun anyway to that person, and that person commits a crime using that weapon, the seller of the gun is equally responsible. It's like being an accessory to the crime. It comes on what's doctrine called the felony murder rule. In other words, if you're sitting in a car in a bank robbery, even if you don't go into the bank and somebody gets killed inside, you have the same responsibility as the person who pulled the trigger inside the bank. And so now you know, law enforcement now knows there's somebody out there that's looking to buy something they're not supposed to have. Now the NRA shouldn't complain because in order to get a restraining order, the petitioner has to satisfy certain requirements. And in the next show, I'll tell you all about those requirements. In the meantime, if you want more information, you can feel free to go to my website, which is judgeherbdodell.us, or if you want to ask any questions, and I'll try to respond. And I don't give legal advice. I'll try to respond. And that email address is askjudgeherb@gmail.com. Hope to see you again real soon.